Welcome, movie fans. Thanks for joining us for episode 103 of Reading Between the Reels, the premier podcast of CGI vampire combat. If you're a new listener, we're so glad you found us. If you've been enjoying the show, please subscribe and review us on iTunes or Spotify. You can also support the show by posting it on your socials and joining our Facebook group. I'm Craig Dickinson alongside Corey Heidschmidt. Justin's out, but should be back next time. How's it going, Corey?
I am good. I am back. Justin tried to get rid of me, but I am an anchor bean, Justin. I'm going nowhere.
Nice. Well, I'm doing good tonight, too. As you know, Corey and some of our listeners, being a teacher is early mornings, long days. You got to make a million decisions throughout the day. And so by the time school's over, trying to ramp up again to do a podcast can be a little tough. So, you know, what do you do? And is it more caffeine? It's like a soda or whatever. It turns out there's actually a better way to do that, Corey. A better way to boost your mental clarity and to keep it up without the crash that comes with caffeine. There's this thing called Magic Mind. And a few weeks ago, kind of behind the curtain a little bit, Magic Mind reached out to us and sent us a few shots to try before sponsoring the podcast. And after just a few days of using it, I can tell the difference. Especially in the morning, I felt tired. If you get that about 11 o'clock, not quite lunch, getting unfocused, I'm feeling a lot more clear-headed, full of energy throughout the day. My stress levels are down. I'm getting a lot more done. Like, I'm running circles around things. It's kind of nuts. The thing is, Magic Mind is it's a mental performance shot. It's developed by doctors and medical researchers. It's the result of over 10 years of research, over 200 scientific studies. It's got mushroom nootropics, adaptogens, and over 100% of your daily vitamins C and D, and only uses the highest grade of ingredients. And here's the thing. It's not just a quick fix. It's a lasting solution to feeling mentally sharp and less stressed. Plus, here's another thing that I really liked. Every bottle you buy supports mental health charities. And thanks to Magic Mind, you have a limited offer right now you can use that gets you up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off one-time purchases with code RBTR20 at checkout. And you can claim that at magicmind.com/RBTR20. Try it for a week. And if it doesn't work for you, they'll refund your purchase within 100 days. No questions asked. So give it a try. It's good stuff. And I did want to go back to our new segment we've been talking about the last couple of times. What have we been watching this week? So, Corey, what kind of movies or TV shows have you been watching since the last time I talked to you?
All right. Since the last time I talked to you, I have gone back to Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm on season 1. I was watching Picard. I was getting ready to go to season 2 of Picard, and I was nostalgic. So this week I went on Star Trek season 1. I'm about 20 episodes in, and so I have it playing a couple times where I'm doing some things, and man, I love it. I love seeing those old shows like that. It's like instant nostalgia, instant time travel for me. So. And Q, I love Q season 1.
Yeah.
I the thing is, I've seen an interview with him. He wasn't supposed to be in season 1 as much, but he was so good that people loved him and worked his way in there. Tasha Yar just died in the last episode I watched.
Yeah.
And I was actually okay with that. I know she wanted off the show, and sometimes she wishes she would not have gotten off the show, but I think in Hollywood some of those things happen where they want to be in a bigger role or don't want to be in a bigger role, or I feel like, man, that's a missed boat because that's such an anchor series of a show. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's what I've been watching, and then my wife and I are watching. We are halfway through it, getting the kids to bed and everything at the end of the night. So sometimes we have to pause the show, which is why streaming is phenomenal.
Yeah,
and so we're watching The Fall Guy. So we're about halfway in. And,
the new movie, Gosling movie. Yeah.
I like that show.
Yeah, it's fun.
I love Ryan Gosling. Ever since The Gray Man, which was a fantastic movie, loved him. Ryan, I love you in The Gray Man. I could use a sequel to that too, by the way. Anyway, but he's great. He's great in these action shows. What are you watching, Craig?
Well, I've told you some of this. I've kind of catched up on a couple of shows that you watched when they were on, but I've just never got to them. So I've been watching kind of back and forth Battlestar Galactica, the 04, the reboot. I'm in the second season right now. They just had the one with they just had like the Pegasus showed up. That was like the big thing. Then we were kind of
the Pegasus.
Yeah,
that's
a good
like
arc.
Okay.
Great arc.
Man, you're in some for wild rides going on now. So
there was like a 3-episode arc there where they showed up. Then kind of they're filtering through some of that, and then I'm also watching Walking Dead. I'm in the second season of that, which was interesting because Daryl Dixon is in this movie we're talking about tonight.
And I had no idea. I had no idea he was in it. Yeah.
And then the last thing is I've been just buying digital copies on Vudu because they've been going on sale. A lot of stuff that I wanted. They recently had the Pirates of the Caribbean, all 5 movies for $30 in 4K. And so I picked that up, and my kids had only seen those like once. So we just watched this last weekend. We watched the first and the second one. So yeah, they've never seen the 4th or the 5th. And so that's been fun to kind of revisit those. And just like, Disney, man, you made such great movies before you started gobbling up the IPs. Like I miss those, taking chances. And Callista, my daughter, did not know that it was based on a ride, which I thought was hilarious. I'm like, no, it was a ride first. This should not have worked, but it totally does.
Well, and I could use another Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I'm telling you, I could bring Johnny Depp back for one more. I love him in that role.
He is great in those for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, we alluded to what we're talking about this week, and it is Blade 2 from 2002. This is our third in the Marvel before the MCU series. We did Blade, of course. Go back if you haven't checked that one out. And then last time we did X-Men from 2000. And now we're on to Blade 2. And Corey, I just was curious, what are your overall thoughts on Blade 2?
All right. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I had never watched Blade 2. I've never watched Blade 3. I don't even actually remember watching Blade 1, right? We watched it for the first podcast where a couple weeks ago we talked about Blade. And that was the first time that I remember watching the entire movie. I watched it. I realized what I missed. I was not into vampires. I'm really not a big vampire guy. It's just not a... I can go behind superheroes. I can get in sports movies. I can get... vampires weren't something I was into. But this Blade movie and how they do it, they do things right with this Blade series. And I think we called this the first MCU Marvel movie. Is that right?
Well, it's not quite MCU, but it's kind of like the template, right? That they're kind of trying some things on.
And since they pulled him into Deadpool, I feel like you could kind of,
you kind of say that's true. You can say that.
MCEU, the extended universe.
That's true.
So I think Blade does an incredible job. It's got a great Blade intro, just like the first one, right? We jump right into some kind of scary vampire stuff and lore, and a little bit of a couple jump scare type things. And we got some new weird next level type vampire than we had from the first movie, which is kind of what you need if you're doing a sequel. And so the thing about it, and I guess the part that I think they do right, they pull off rescuing, spoiler alert, Kris Kristofferson and bringing him back. He was such an incredible, legendary performance in the first one. They killed him off, and we're like, oh my gosh. They realize, hey, this movie's successful. We need to do a sequel. And they're going to bring him back in the next one. We all know he's coming back. We love it. It's great. But rather than doing half the movie build up to try and drag him back out in some way, they just say, you know what? We're going to bite it off. Here we go. 5 minutes into the movie, we brought him back. We're going to throw some excuse at you why he's back. And you're just going to accept it. He's the same character he was. And we moved on.
Yep.
Doggone it, Craig. I didn't need a 90-minute movie that, goes and spends, 80 minutes of it trying to figure out how they're going to try and get him back. And, what are they going to do because he's a vampire, right? No, we get him back. We cure him. We fix him. He's healthy. He heals up. We're good to go. Let's get the show going. That right there wins me over. I've been sick and tired of sitting through reboots of the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and all these shows that I do love still. But Blade, the very first movie, I had 5 minutes, opening scene, action. It's incredible. I don't have a huge origin story to bog me down, and I just accept and move on. And then same thing with the sequel. You brought back a character that's like, wait, how'd they kill that guy off? And it's not going to ruin the movie for me if you bring him back in 5 minutes. And so I accept it. And I think that's just a way to do things. It's a great premise for a sequel. Yeah. It's a new breed of vampires. An alliance has to be developed. You want me to hunt them for you. I mean, that's a great line. But the fact that they do things right in this movie, the fighting, the sets, everything they do that we're going to talk about, I think it's a great movie. So I was like, okay, I can't believe I didn't watch this and I didn't jump on board with this show earlier. So anyway, as you could tell, I'm a little excited about it. Because when I finished it, I was like, wow, what was I doing in 2002 that I didn't watch this movie? So,
yeah, I mean, he's not here with us physically, but in spirit, Justin is definitely here too. I knew he would have had some of that same reactions, and I talked to him at lunch today a little bit, and he texted the two of us and was like, "Guys, this movie is badass." And, yeah, and Justin doesn't use that word, so
no,
not lightly. So, it's. I mean, I agree. I saw it in the theater. I've seen it multiple times. I hadn't seen it in years, and I agree with just about everything you said. Like, it's bigger, bloodier, gorier, more violent. Everything you want a sequel to be. It is a natural extension, I think, of us. It makes sense. We got to team up with vampires to take down bigger vampires. Lots more CGI in this one, but I think most of it holds up pretty well. And hot take, I think it's funnier than the first movie.
Yeah, there's a little bit more humor in a few spots.
Yeah, like it still treats its subject matter seriously, but I think it's definitely more quotable than the first movie, and there's a lot more. Yes. I think you kind of need that because it is darker in some ways, so you kind of need that levity, a lot like Empire Strikes Back. Obviously, another whole other level there, but that's the darkest and the funniest Star Wars movie at the same time. So this kind of apes that a little bit.
Yeah, I think we get 3 Wesley Snipes smiles in this one. So yeah, I mean that's
definitely
bigger than the one. Yes.
Ooh.
And Kris Kristofferson has some great lines too. They bring him back. Holy cow!
Yeah, good stuff. All right, so let's jump into some of the stuff that we really liked. Let's start with like we usually do with cinematography. So composition, images, color, camera work. What kind of things did you pull out?
All right, so if we're going with okay, again we have bad lighting. Okay, it's a vampire movie. There's got to be some dark spots. Mm-hmm. Tons of blue light, right? And some of those things makes it hard to see. And I know they're going for the UV things and trying to hammer that. But it is a lot of dark corners, a few jump scares. But the thing I noticed on a couple of parts, again, because you told me in the first Blade that we watched, Craig, how many times Wesley Snipes gets an upshot in the camera.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's short, and I didn't know he was so short. You told me that, and so a lot of times you see the camera mounted lower than his profile, and so we see him up, which makes him look taller, and so which I thought was interesting. So I agreed. I mean, you agree? You saw that more this time too, or?
I mean, I was looking forward to it. Since we had that conversation, I'm like, yeah, this guy's 5'9". Let's watch how big he presents himself.
Yeah. And then there was a lot of spinning tight shots on. You see parts where Guillermo del Toro, what's his name? Say it again, Craig.
Del Toro.
Del Toro. Well, Del Toro, he does some shots where he kind of frames them like a photographer, where he'll show a third of your arm holding something, like a real tight.
Mm-hmm. Lots of close-ups.
Kind of positions them close. And then in the background, you see something that they're holding like they're holding a knife, and something in the back, you see the knife for. Right? So he does a lot of these tight shots like that, and then he comes back, and it's a sweeping or a panning, just slightly moving a little bit, and then we're back to a close-up of a face, like real filling up the screen, and then we pan back. So it seems like he does a lot of that in some of the scenes. I didn't see too much shaky cam, which I love. I love to see these guys put in the work for the choreography and the fights they have to do. So overall, I think, I mean, Del Toro's a legend in what he does anyway, but it is a great movie with some great shots for me.
Yeah, I watching it this time in terms of watching the first one so recently, I did notice they kind of, and I know this was intentional, that they kind of aped some of the cinematography from the first movie with some of the snap zooms and things like that, and the fast motion out of slow motion. But it is also very different in a lot of ways than the first movie rather. So a couple of things that I really noticed camera work wise was like it would almost be like a video game where it would like zoom in and then kind of pan around in a very kind of unnatural thing, where there's like that early in the film where he jumps off the building and it's in profile, and the camera follows him as he rotates through, and like it's very unnatural. I mean, I mentioned the CGI thing up at the top too. Like some of the fighting is clearly CGI, and I talked to Justin about this today too. It's like I don't know how vampires actually would move anyway. So the whole like uncanny valley thing, like that doesn't really bother me at all. Like it's unnatural. It should look weird. So I didn't mind that at all. One thing that struck me that I hadn't thought of, because I think rightly so, the Incredible Hulk, like the Ed Norton MCU movie, gets a lot of credit because their opening credits are essentially his origin story. You know, they kind of just move past it and then you catch up and he's, you know, the fugitive or whatever. This movie did it first, right? Where it does, and even before, you know, Spider-Man 2 does it as well in the credits, where they like, here's the first movie and it's got the opening narration and all that stuff. And I'd forgotten that was that. And I think what a brilliant way, if you hadn't seen Blade 1, like I don't think you even needed that. Like this movie's self-contained, you know, like he's a vampire hunter or whatever. But I really like the way they caught us up with like the black and white or kind of grayscale images at the front. So I thought that was really smart.
Well, and I think that's the brilliance of some of these things. It's kind of like, do you expect your audience to be people who've never watched the movie and have to get, well, I need to know who this guy is before I can really appreciate the movie? Or do you look and you say, people who are coming in here are enjoying this type of movie. They're here for vampires, they're here for superheroes, but they're willing to accept a character where they're at and start a movie and a story and an arc. And I think that's what is good about these Blade movies. They start with people just saying, you're going to accept this. And in the beginning of this season, or this season, in the beginning of this sequel, they have a Wesley Snipes monologue in the opening credits.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, it felt so video game cutscene like now. Like that's what you get with a video game where, you know, it's a dark and stormy night and my name is Blade, you know, and it's kind of like it was very video game feeling. And then boom, we're right into a rave party and going and, you know, him saving Kris Kristofferson, and it just moved right into the movie. And so there's a short, quick wrap up there for people or a catch up. And then we go right into the action, and that's what pulls people in. So, and I'll say this with the camera work pulling back, Snipes is athletic in this movie. Yeah. I mean, there's some big shots of him doing fights and kicks, and sometimes you can see tell, it's him. Yeah, you can see that's him, you know, and you can tell. You can always see, okay, this guy's really pulling those punches. You can tell they're a movie star they're trained to do some of these fight scenes. Like Snipes just looks great at beast mode in this movie. He put in the work to do choreography for this movie and make it look incredible.
Yeah, and then I just to kind of build on that, the last two things I wanted to talk about was this, and you kind of alluded to the low angles before, but the two fights, Blade versus Nomak, the first one in the abandoned church, which is up on those scaffolding, so there has to be kind of low angle, but they show it's like almost like a vertical fight because they're so high and the camera keeps moving. You have some real extreme low angles. And then that final fight that they have, tons of extreme angles, rotating the cameras around, unnatural speed. Again, feels very much like a video game, but I love it. It works because I think also at the time it was very revolutionary. Yeah. You know, this is a couple years after The Matrix, 3 years after. Matrix is 99. And I remember seeing this in theater and having this thought, and I had this discussion with Justin today too. Like, it feels like they took The Matrix and then went the next mile. They moved it up a level. Yeah, with some of the fights.
Definitely the fights. They put in some money on this. And then the one hokey shot that I got to say, but this is a camera trick, was him catching his sunglasses. Okay. Now, if anybody watches that, because I ended up, I got to hit the back 10 seconds and watch that. I did that probably 6-7 times because I was like, it's hokey as all get out, but at the same time, I was like, that does not look CGI. And I don't think it is. So I watched that and 6-7 times. I'm convinced it's a reverse of the camera.
Oh, that would make sense.
I'm convinced Snipes had, if you watch this, Snipes takes the gloves off, or the glasses off. They're Oakley Forest, by the way. It was on the Amazon trivia. So he takes the glasses off, holds them up, and I think they yank them back up to Kris Kristofferson, who then catches them and then does the throw. Yeah,
or he could have just thrown it and they cut to it. Yeah, it's pretty great.
And then they reversed it. They reversed the
angle. That would
make
sense. Yeah,
because
I can see that.
Kris Kristofferson's arm does an unnatural take back. And so I was like, oh, he's in his mind, I got to do this backwards, and it's weird. And I thought, oh, that was so I'm pretty convinced that was a camera like reversing the camera and not a CGI shot or something like that. So
it's pretty cool.
Anyway,
like he is wearing his glasses. That's one thing I noticed. I mean, he's wearing his sunglasses in the dark, underground, in the cave, in the tunnels, all this stuff. So he's got to have them. He's suiting up again.
He took a kick to the face. He took some punches to the face. Those glasses, Oakley, you have got a commercial here. I mean, they're indestructible.
They held up. Let's go ahead and move on down to sound. I'm going to just jump in real quick. Just, again, that vamps turning to ash sound. I really, really like that one. There's a lot more blood in this one, so there's like a spurting sound you hear a lot. But the Reapers, that's the new vampires. Their mandible opening and the tongue sound is just disgusting.
That's the one that I had written down right here, Craig, because I was like, it is so like, oh my gosh, I can't even. It just gives me the chills. And I thought, that's the worst way to go, right? Getting bit by a vampire would be bad, but those mandibles would be the worst thing.
Yeah, and clearly somebody saw Alien, right? Because it's very reminiscent of the Xenomorph, right?
Yes.
Oh, it's so good.
Again, with the rave party, you got to have one in every Blade movie, so I'm expecting one in the third. Got to stick with it. And let's see. There's a... Oh, here's what I had. I had the zoom-in sounds where the sound goes soft like it's a tunnel. So they're walking down in the rave party and they're hunting. They're looking for the vampires and stuff. And it's kind of that scene type feel where something runs across. And so you turn and look. Yeah. And the music and the sound almost, it's like it zoomed in. Like you see their intensity and the focus, everything got drowned out and the sound narrowed. That's the only way I can describe it. It narrowed.
Yeah.
And they were looking. It almost slowed it down a little bit or something. I don't know what it was, but it was very noticeable. And they did it multiple times as they were hunting those little new guys. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting sound effect.
Yeah. I thought moved on to the score. We have a new composer, Marco Beltrami, rather, who also did Hellboy and the Wolverine and Logan and a bunch of other stuff. He did like 310 to Yuma and Live Free or Die Hard, just to give you just kind of a reference on that. I thought his score, though, was really interesting. There's a lot of like pop music mixed in too. But I'm going to start with just the first thing that really grabbed me is that the main title kind of starts with those same kind of synth vibes that the first movie had. And then all of a sudden it's like 70s style horns and strings, like a blaxploitation movie, like mixed together. It's the weirdest thing, but it totally works.
Okay, well, I just was like, the sound was all over the board on this one, but
it's an interesting mix. And then there's this song, and I love this. I love doing the tracks and figuring out what the names of them are. When the two vampires, was it Nisa and the other guy, come in and break into the lair. It's all very frantic strings and cymbals, almost kind of cartoony. Reminds me a little bit of like the asteroid chase in Empire, to go back to Empire again. The name of that song is Suckheads Infiltrate. And I just
that's his
his
line from the first one, Suckheads.
Yeah, I love it. But yeah, it's very cartoony. This movie is over the top, even with the score. It's way over the top, and I love it for that. So a couple other things, like you've got, obviously, but you have Mos Def and Massive Attack's Eye Against Eye as they're going to enter the House of Pain. You got Ice Cube and Paul Oakenfold's Right Here, Right Now as they head out in the daylight to go track down the Reapers at the end. And then, of course, Name of the Game by the Crystal Method as Blade comes out of the pool and right before he takes on like 30 guys and gets his sunglasses and all that stuff. It just kind of pumps you up a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the rave scene. That's the Tao of the Machine by the Roots in BT. So, yeah, a couple other things. Yeah. Oh, also Crystal Method and Scud listening to them as well. So
early 2000s, those were probably big names, I guess.
Yeah, like Prodigy was big. So
yeah,
a lot of that stuff was very popular at the time. Anything else sound-wise before we move down to performance?
No, I think I'm good there.
So I mentioned before that it's very, very quotable. So Corey, I'm curious if you have one or two lines that you really liked from this movie that kind of just made you chuckle.
Craig, I do, and I'm just curious, what's our cussing rating
we're PG.
To follow here?
We're PG.
We're PG. All right. Okay, so if I replace Well, I got to go with Whistler because they bring back Kris Kristofferson 5 minutes into the movie, and I'm just like, yes, I know I'm getting some cuss words and some sassy attitude. And I love it when they're in the sewer and which, by the way, I got to say with the sewer, why are you walking in the sewage where there's dead bodies piled up like skeletons? I was like, oh my gosh, you're going to have a disease after that. But anyway, so they're in their sewer and Ron Perlman, and we can also compliment the depth of cast they have.
Oh, yeah,
Ron
the cast is
Perlman,
huge. Yeah.
I mean, Donnie Yen, Kris Kristofferson.
Yeah, barely used Donnie Yen, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, Donnie Yen was not used enough. But all of these guys are top names. Anyway.
And they look cool, so yeah.
Oh, yes. Ron Perlman in this movie. So he is fantastic. He makes some snarky comment to Whistler about being quiet. And he says, well, yeah, some of us can't see in the dark, you effing nipplehead. What am I supposed to do? And I just thought right there, nipplehead. I mean, that's a new word. How has that not caught on? Because that was just hilarious. So I'm going to throw that there as one of my first quotes that honestly made me laugh out loud watching the movie.
See, I thought that when you were going to go with, because he has so many good ones. When he comes out of the vat and Blade says, "How do you feel?" and he says, "Like hammered shit."
See, that's good too.
What an analogy there.
I love it when you talk dirty to me. The guy is great.
Yeah. Oh man. Another one I really liked. I'm gonna use 3 because Justin's not here. I want to take his. That one guy, he meets the lawyer. He says, "You're human." He says, "Barely. I'm a lawyer."
I had that as my next one. Barely. I'm a lawyer. Like, if
Self-aware.
that's not just the truth right there. Oh. The next one I'm going to go with is Nomak when he is talking to Blade the first time, and he says, "Is the enemy of my enemy my friend or my enemy?" And so I thought it was kind of, he knew what was going on. He knew about the team up. So I thought that was a great line. So
yeah,
put that in there.
My last one I'm going to use is I'll edit it because I want to keep us PG. But Scud, Norman Reedus' character, says, "So B-Man, what do you think?" And Blade says, "Sounds like a plan." And Whistler says, "What do you really think?" He says, "They're going to F us the first chance they get." Because he knows.
Yep, he knows.
100% knows. He doesn't trust them. And then it's revealed later he absolutely did not trust them. But I love the back and forth. Like, that's almost pithy MCU level right there.
Yeah. Almost.
Did you have anything else from there?
I did. I had where Ron Perlman says to Blade, says to him, "Can you blush?"
Yeah.
And kind of a snarky thing early on, but then Blade repeats it to him right before he kills him. Like, he repeats that. And I thought that was kind of a nice little payoff for that part. So
slice that dude in half. Good Lord.
Oh my gosh.
You said something about, go ahead.
Oh, Scott had some good quotes too. He's like, he even says, kind of Whistler-like, "You heard cue ball, right? Pretty soon they're all going to be daywalkers." And then, so I thought it was kind of good because it's just, there's a lot of just slang terms thrown at each other. They're just making those things, nipplehead, cue ball. I mean, they were just something else, but.
Yeah. As far as like body language, facial expressions, I mean, I mentioned this a little bit before with the CGI fighting, but yeah, and you've also said too, like, I think the martial arts is better in this film than it was in the previous film, and that was a high bar, but it is even like the practical stuff is amazing too. Yes, obviously there's some CGI stuff that's fake, but like, they're supernatural creatures, so I'm good with it. But go ahead.
I feel like the sword fighting stuff in this is better. The sword fighting,
there's a lot more sword fighting. Yeah,
is way better in this movie. Donnie Yen himself, like some of the movies that he's done in his life, like just amazing martial arts and some of that. And I don't know if he's like, I mean, when they're making this movie, he's going through stuff, but with Blade, but there's so much better, and I feel like it's less hokey of an ending for some of this, because the first Blade where he jumps and kicks the thing with his heel and pops the guy in the head, kicks the little needle.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that you bit off a little bit more than I can believe on that part, right? You know, like
lifting up the Kryptonite Island, Corey.
I can't go this far. Okay, I can go somewhat. I can believe in daywalkers and vampires, but I can't believe in a perfectly timed martial arts kick to hit him in the head. So, you know, I bought the ticket, but that's what happens. Yeah. So at this one, I feel like there wasn't too much hokey stuff like that. And so I feel like the martial arts, the fighting was even better. We still had another one of those 1990 scenes where Blade goes one punching and kicking people and killing like a whole troop of soldiers as he does to get to Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
You know, but this time we got to see, no, he was actually taking those people. He was snapping necks and popping people in the head, file driving them. And so the fights were a little more complete than that 90s hokey one punch. We don't know what happened to that guy, but he must be dead. So.
Yeah, I was going to.
Yeah, character-wise, and I mean, body language-wise, I think that was really good and a little more complete.
I wanted to mention the shrug/shiver thing, where so exciting part, where you get to see a little bit more of Blade's personality in this one, where he's mocking them. And the other one I had too is him just in the nightclub standing there with his arms crossed, and Ron Perlman's character, who I really should look up, but I'll find it in a minute. It has the laser pointed at him, and then Blade also has the laser pointed at him, but it's super nonchalant. Like, I don't even have to think about killing you.
I always just love that scene.
Yeah, Reinhardt is Ron Perlman's character. Reinhardt.
Yep.
One thing I thought was interesting. At first, I've noticed that Blade has essentially the same costume, except he has a red lining on it now, which is kind of cool looking. There's going to be a little bit more of that moving around in the next movie as well. A little bit more color added to that. It's still dark red, so it's blood and those kind of things. But here's a question that I had. I thought was kind of interesting. So there's several scenes, but there's one in particular where Blade is bent over, and you can really, really see it's very pronounced. His widow's peak, like the pointy part of his hair. Yeah. And I was like, is that a nod to vampire tropes and the whole like traditional Dracula thing? Because it's very much the same shape, and it's kind of like you turned it on its head, and I'm not sure what the origin of that was, but it reminded me of that. And so I was like, that's kind of cool if you're taking that vampire trope and super modernizing it. I mean, obviously the rest of his hair is very modern and sculpted and whatnot, but I thought that was kind of interesting. Oh, hey, I wonder if that's a thing. So
again, the vampire lore that I didn't follow early, but I'm going to take your word on that one.
Yeah. I also really liked the translucence. There's really kind of Damaskinos, the head old vampire who's in charge of everything, he's super old, right? He's got those huge robes, which are it's very ancient, but he's also almost see-through. Like you can tell this dude is really old, and kind of his skin's kind of, not really holding up, as are the Reapers, because, they know they can't sustain themselves and they have to continually replenish the blood supply. So I thought those some really interesting and great makeup. Like I don't think any of it's CGI. I'm sure it's just straight makeup at this time, but I thought that was an interesting choice.
And when those two get together, I thought at the end where the son comes to the father and is going to take him out, and they're getting close and they hug, and I thought, wow, it's quite good how they showed their two skins. And I mean, it, like you're saying, they were very, a little bit more translucent, definitely a different texture. It was quite amazing. So they did well done on that.
So moving down to setting design, I thought this was pretty cool. They actually filmed it on location in the Czech Republic, because the opening part is in Prague, and they're literally in Prague, and there's some stuff in London as well, which happens at the end. So that's cool that they're on location. They didn't have to be. I mean, last time it was in a shampoo factory in LA, I think, is where most of the stuff was filmed. They got a little bit more, only $10 million more for the budget. And that was another thing Justin said. Like, it looks like they got a lot more money. They spent it really well. They made about $23 million more on this one, so it progressed a little bit more. But it looks and feels like a much bigger sequel. And clearly, like, being on location is a big part of that.
Yeah.
And I just had to laugh. Like, as far as my first location, that there is a vampire blood bank, which is a thing we'll revisit in the third movie. Spoiler.
Yeah.
But I thought, like, of course. Why not? I mean, that one guy's like, they'll even buy it in a jar. Like, because they're vampires, you dummy.
They need it.
Oh, amazing.
The part that I'm going to say, Damaskinos' castle, or wherever he is at, looks amazing. There was some amazing views in there. and I thought, I don't know what building that is. It must be, but it was quite impressive. They did that with the last one too. Whatever table he was sitting at when his daughter brings back the ring from the sun, I think that table was ornate. I mean, so that's a heck of a prop to put in a movie. So
yeah, I had some things about like the exterior of the building is very angular and it's modern, but it also feels kind of ancient, almost like a pyramid type of thing. And then the farther down that they go, the more ancient it appears. You start to see like the stone walls, and the massive sewers are also stone. But there's some beautifully old fashioned type of stuff that's mixed in with some modern stuff, and they flow together really nicely.
Yeah,
like the farther down you go, it's more ancient, which I thought was kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, I will say this: the set that they filmed this on is amazing. At the end, when they capture Blade after the sewer scene, they capture him, they bring him back, and he's in this room. All the guards are on top, and there's a big pool of blood down below. And we got to have water tubes going through. Like, that is a real set. Whatever that was filmed in or bought or purchased or made, there's no green screen in here.
No, it's huge too. Yeah.
I mean, this was constructed. You could walk in at that point and be like, I am on the set of Blade, and see exactly, like, you could have stood in that spot and been in the movie. That's incredible. And you don't see that a lot anymore. You get these depth things, and you can always see there's a line somewhere where the green screen's at, or you can kind of tell, some of those CGI scenes, but back then, 2000, I mean, they were still building real sets for some of this stuff that was absolutely stunning. So I just feel like when you put in that much work, you deserve to be noticed on a podcast 22 years later that whoever built that set did an amazing job.
Yeah, it's a great set. Got that giant blood pool where he dives into it and comes out and kicks some butt. Let's see, the weapons, we had a few new things. The silver nitrate head explosive, that was new. That always still has the silver weapons like the sword and whatever. There's blood-soaked cocaine, which is kind of a nice touch. The thing that always kind of tripped me out a little bit, and I was living in Southern California where we had a Krispy Kreme near us, was the fact that Scud got Krispy Kreme donuts delivered to him somehow. And like, I don't think they'd be good. I think they'd be pretty stale, but he seems to enjoy them, as he calls them mother's milk and whatnot. But
yeah,
okay.
Back in those times, was DoorDash wasn't a thing, but
no, like you got donuts shipped to Prague. So a couple of cool weapons. Well, the UV light grenades I thought were a super cool weapon.
And the CGI on those was really nice.
Yeah.
The way they made it bright.
And I thought there was a couple of things that were at least reminded me of Dune. And I don't know. I mean, Dune, obviously the novel exists from the late 60s. And so Dune would have been first. But a couple of things like the Damaskinos ring being a big thing, like the signet ring. I mean, that's a thing that Paul has to show. Like, hey, I'm the Duke's son. That Nomak has that. And so that's kind of how you know. That's the key to that. But because you also see at one point Damaskinos goes into the blood pool and like kind of replenishes himself, which is very reminiscent of Baron Harkonnen doing that, kind of in the oil bath in Dune, the most recent Dune movie. So I thought there's some striking imagery that I had seen somewhere else before. I'm like, oh yeah, that's.
I thought that same thing when he went in there into that bath. I thought the same thing, Craig. I thought, oh my gosh, this is like that Dune movie that you had me watch.
Those are great movies, Corey.
They're good. They're better than Blade Runner.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, Justin.
You watched the wrong one. Moving down to characters. I'm trying to see if we forgot anybody. Obviously, we mentioned Snipes and Kris Kristofferson, Ron Perlman. Leonore Varela as Nisa. I don't know if I've ever seen her anything else. But yeah, Norman Reedus was my big takeaway. And I'm sure for most people, hey, that's the guy from The Walking Dead. But for me, he will always be Scud first.
Yeah. He was great in Scud. I liked him. I felt like he was basically just Daryl Dixon as in a vampire movie. So, I mean, having seen him in Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Kris Kristofferson is amazing again. Donnie Yen was too short of a scene. I would love to have him for more. especially with how big he's become. I think that was, he was so
I
good.
saw his name in the credits and I'm like, oh, Donnie Yen's in this? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, that's why I don't remember Donnie Yen being in
And
this.
then Ron Perlman is just a legend in it. The whole Blood Gang that they had was great. The guy that played Priest, Tony Curran, he was good.
Yeah.
He's done quite a few things, actually, so he's quite big.
Yeah. One that stuck with me was the guy that plays Damaskinos. That's Thomas Kretschmann, who plays Strucker in the He's played other things, but played Baron von Strucker in the MCU. Because he has a really kind of distinctive voice. And so, I mean, you see him in the beginning of Age of Ultron, and he's in a cutscene in, I think, Civil War. I might be able to get that second one wrong. But yeah, so again, showing up in comic book movies. A guy that we'd seen before.
Yeah.
For Hero's Journey, no. It's not that. Not at all.
It's just a hero movie, but yeah.
And as far as world building goes, like just like we kind of mentioned earlier, just naturally expands on the lore that's built in the first movie. It's bigger, and like we go to Europe. We went to Europe a tiny bit at the end of the last movie, but I think that was a really smart idea too, to just not repeat the first movie. Like, let's go somewhere very different.
Yeah.
And Europe obviously is much older than Los Angeles, so going to Prague is genius.
Now, world building here, I'm going to go with, this is kind of amazing, this thought. This is the first Marvel movie, MCU, movie that had a cutscene. The only thing is, the cutscene is at the end of the movie instead of in the middle of the credits. That end scene where he goes after that guy that he let go in the beginning, that should have been a cutscene in the middle of the credits, a little post-credit scene. That's what that should have been. And I think it was.
Got a little coda.
It's a post-credit scene where he's like, "Did you think I forgot about you?" And he kills that guy, that vampire, right? He's kind of a pervert anyway. But he kills him, and it's like, that's a 20-second clip that would have been at the end of the credits, and then it says, "Blade will return in Blade 3." That's what that would have been. That's exactly what we would have had. So I'm going to call that, just say that's a cutscene, post-credit scene right there.
Kind of is. So one thing that we kind of talked about last time with X-Men, Justin and I, was, again, trying to watch this as if it was all in the same shared universe and if it was an all plan. And I contended that I can kind of see, like, they're in very different locations. Like, even Blade 1's on the West Coast and X-Men's on the East Coast, and now Blade's in Europe. And can you see these movies so far, X-Men and the Blade 2 movies, existing in the same shared universe? Would that make sense tonally?
Well, yeah, absolutely, because the X-Men movie starts out in New York, right? Or goes to New York.
Yeah.
And so Alaska, New York, some of the things. So I feel like you could have these in the same universe. They're different continents and they're different parts. So this is definitely European lore with those vampires and stuff. Yeah. So absolutely. I think there's enough traction. I think Blade's got to get a comeback. There's got to be a Blade 4.
Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and transition down into final thoughts. I think that's probably one of your first ones, right? That we should see more Wesley Snipes as Blade.
Absolutely. All right, so Craig, here's the thing. I feel like I'm a perfect judge on this movie because I didn't watch it when it came out. I didn't buy into this whole Blade thing. I wasn't a Blade guy. I wasn't into vampires, but I loved, from Iron Man on, I've been like, oh man, these are great shows. I saw him in Wolverine, and I thought, okay, I knew we were doing it with the podcast, went back, watched Blade 1, thought, well, this is done right, okay? And so, as a newcomer to these, I feel like I'm getting a good judgment on them. So, Blade 1, I feel like was done right. We jump right in. We accept there's an origin story. We don't have to know it. We move on. Blade 2, we get a sequel with a pretty good arc. The father, the old man is the father to the villain of the new villain, and he's kind of an evolved one. And I feel like we bring back some beloved characters within 5 minutes, and we move on. So they're kind of doing things right. And so I look and I say, Craig, we're going into Blade 3. Is it going to deliver for me? That's my question. Is Blade 3 jumping the shark, or is Blade 3 going to be a great another addition to this movie for a little trilogy? And because at this point, I'm on board with Wesley Snipes saying in Wolverine, there was only one Blade. There's only ever going to be one Blade. Yeah. And so I'm on board with that for Blade 4.
Well, I will say this without spoiling too much, that you get a different director for each of the Blade movies. And so keep that in mind. And also you have David Goyer, who's the writer of this trilogy. He directs the third movie. And so it's his baby. Okay. So it becomes, it's as much of, he gets, I don't think he has anyone telling him no on that, on a lot of stuff in that maybe some people could have. I personally enjoy it. I think that, and there's some alternate endings and stuff like that. So there's different ways that you can want to watch that movie. I'll be curious to see what you guys think about it. It's obviously, it's got Ryan Reynolds in it. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot lighter touch than this one is.
Yeah.
And the first movie as well. So,
okay.
I'll be interested to see what you guys think, whether or not it strikes that balance. But as for this movie, I'm so glad that you and Justin hadn't seen it, so that because I'm watching it, I can't help it. I'm watching it with nostalgia glasses. I remember watching this in the theater and enjoying it. But for you guys, because my big question with all of these is, does it hold up? And you're like, yes, a first-time movie viewer, yeah, I like this movie. So yes, it does hold up, definitively. And I think that's cool. It's 57% Rotten Tomatoes, whatever. Like, I'm so done with Rotten Tomatoes sometimes. And this is because, again, when we were kids, it was, hey, what did Roger Ebert think? And even then, sometimes you're like, whatever. Roger Ebert liked this movie. He gave it 3 out of 4. And this, I love the quotes. There's a couple great quotes on this one. He said, Blade 2 is a really rather brilliant vomitorium of viscera, a comic book with dreams of becoming a textbook for mad surgeons. Love that one. And then I like this one too, even though it's a negative review. James Bernardinelli says he gave it 2.5 out of 4. He says Blade 2 is for those undiscriminating moviegoers who want nothing more from a trip to the multiplex than loud, raucous, mindless entertainment. Like, sometimes that's what I want. I'm going in to see. I want to see Blade kicking ass, lots of blood. That's what I wanted to see, and the movie delivers in spades. So
those critics are paid per word, so we don't care what they say.
But a couple other things, just kind of some other nominations and whatnot at the Saturn Awards, which is still pretty prestigious. It was nominated for both Best Horror Film, lost to The Ring. Yeah, I can kind of see that. And Best Makeup. Scary. Which lost to The Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, because that's going on at the same time too.
Oh, you're not going to defeat Two Towers in makeup. Yeah. Come on,
you're not.
That's Peter Jackson. Yeah. This movie's a great, fun movie, and I think if you go in and accept, I'm going to be entertained, and you got to just accept there's going to be a little bit of gore and some great fighting scenes. You're going to be very entertained with this movie.
And on that note, we're going to go ahead and close, and we just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on X, Instagram, and Facebook. Email us at readingbetweenreels@gmail.com, or use the SpeakPipe app on our website. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and review us on iTunes or Spotify. And don't forget to give our sponsor Magic Mind a try. You have a limited offer you can use now that gets you up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off one-time purchases with code RBTR20 at checkout. You can claim it at magicmind.com/RBTR20. And one last thing, our next episode is a big one. We'll be now reviewing Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire's first movie. Sam Raimi. Send us an email or voicemail about your favorite moments from Spider-Man, and we'll share it on the next episode.